I'd like to look again at the topic of ser and estar, and in a way take our usage of it to the next level. First of all, what is it that we already know about these verbs? Well, we use ser when we're talking about identity, whereas estar is used more for emotions, feelings, and location. Let's look at an example. If we take, say, a picture. So we're going to list things that we can say on one side with ser and things that we can say on the other side with estar. Now on the ser side, again, we're talking about identity. So how would we describe the identity of this man? Well, first of all, you can say his name. So es Juan. And then obviously he's a man, that's belonging to his identity as well. So es un hombre. Let's imagine that he's tall, so es alto, and that he's friendly, has a friendly personality, so es amigable. Let's also imagine that he's an ambitious person. So this again would belong to his identity, how we would picture him, visualize him, or describe him to someone else. So es ambicioso. Finally, let's imagine that he's a father. Of course, this also relates to his identity, who he is. So es padre. As you can see, on the ser side, everything relates to his identity, how we see him, how we would describe him. Now, on the estar side, we could say está feliz. What we're saying is that this morning or right now as he's driving the car, he's feeling happy. Está feliz. And we have the next one here, está emocionado. Let's imagine that he is going for a promotion, or it's likely that he's going to get a promotion at work, so he's excited. Está emocionado. The next one is está apurado, meaning he's in a hurry. This is what's going on right now, what he's going through. And finally, for location, está en su coche. He's in his car. Now, on the estar side, these ones are not necessarily attached to his identity. It's just what he's going through at the moment, or where he physically is. Two of these could in fact be switched over to the ser side if we wanted. So if we said es feliz, what we're implying now is that he tends to be a happy person all the time. But with está feliz, we're describing that this is what he's going through at the moment. Also the same with está emocionado. So he's excited at this point in time about something that's going to happen at work. We'll imagine that. Now, taking things one step further, we could also apply these same distinctions to animals. Again, let's take a picture of a bull. Now, this bull, we can say things about his identity, how we visualize him or how we would describe him. So first of all, on the ser side, es un toro, it's a bull. Es grande, he's big. Es agresivo, he's aggressive. Generally, when we think about bulls, we're seeing their personality as being aggressive. This belongs to their identity as an animal. Next one we have is es territorial, so he's territorial. Es fuerte, he's strong. And es peligroso, he's dangerous. So being a bull, being big, being aggressive, territorial, strong, and dangerous all belongs to the identity of a bull, or at least how I would describe one. This is how I'm visualizing him, or how I would talk about him to another person. So I'm using ser to express these traits of his identity. Now, on the estar side, I could say something like está tranquilo, so he's calm, meaning right now in this moment, he's relatively calm. I might also say está contento, he's happy. So he's there in his field, no one's bothering him, he's not agitated or getting ready to charge me, right? So he's calm and he's happy. This is what he's going through at the moment. So what I'm hoping is that you're getting the distinction down here if we split this into two sides. On one side, ser is being used to talk about his identity, and the other side is being used to talk about the emotions or the current state that he's in. Now, where we can really take our knowledge of using ser and estar to the next level is that we can apply these same distinctions to things. In other words, inanimate objects. Let's look at a picture of a car. Now this car has an identity. We can say first of all what it is. So es un coche, it's a car. Something else that belongs to its identity is its color. So es amarillo. Let's imagine that it's an automatic car. So es automático. It's a fast car. Es rápido. Let's imagine that it's a popular car. So es popular. It's new. So es nuevo. And let's imagine that it's a relatively safe car. So es seguro. In other words, if I were to visualize this particular model of car, this is the identity that I would attach to it. That it's a car, that it's yellow, that it's automatic, right? It's not manual, that it's fast, that it's popular, that it's new, and that it's a safe model car. So just the same as a person or an animal could have things attached to their identity, so too can inanimate things, whether it be a car or a table, or even a cup and saucer. They too have things that we can say about their identity. Now on the estar side, we could say something like está sucio. You can see half of it here is dirty, or está limpio, the other side is clean. You could also say that it's wet, it's getting washed, so está mojado. Now these things do not belong to its core identity. These things relate to its condition or its state. For example, if a car was clean or dirty, that doesn't say anything about its identity. It just describes the current state that it's in. So here is where Spanish will make a distinction. It will draw a line and split these two things. The key point to remember is that when you're talking about things or inanimate objects, you will still use ser to describe its identity, but you will use estar to describe the state or condition that it's in. So whether it's clean, whether it's dirty, whether it's dry or wet, and so forth. Let's look at another example. Here we have again an inanimate object, it's a bedroom. So on the ser side, let's talk about the identity of this bedroom. So first of all, it's a bedroom. Es una recámara. We could say that it's small, so es pequeña. It's calm. Let's imagine that this is a quiet place to be. So es tranquila. And it's private. Es privada. So this is how we would describe the room, its identity, how we visualize it, how we see it. Now on the estar side, we could say something like está desordenada. So it's messy. Now being messy does not belong to the identity of this room. It's just the current state or the current condition that it's in. It's nothing more than that. It's something on the surface. So here again, you can see Spanish making a distinction between the identity of the room, the fact that it is a bedroom, the size of it is small, it's a calm room, it's quiet, and it's private. This is the identity of it. But the fact that it's messy just relates to the current condition that it's in. We could, of course, clean this room, tidy it up, and then it would be clean and tidy. Returning back to our key point then, when we're referring to people or animals, ser is for identity, and estar will be used to describe feelings, emotions, or location. So that's going to be the same for both people and animals, living things. Whereas for inanimate objects, you will still use ser for their identity, but when it comes to the state or current condition that they're in, you will switch into using estar. Here's another example for you. Let's take a china cup. So on the ser side, we could imagine that, say, this is an antique cup. So it's old, es vieja. That belongs to its identity. The fact that it could be valuable. Let's say it's an antique, it's a collector's item, it's rare. So es valiosa, it's valuable. It's elegant, right? So es elegante. And it's also delicate. So es delicada. So being old, being valuable, being elegant, and being delicate all relates to this cup's identity. This is how we visualize it or how we would describe it to somebody else. Whereas on the estar side, we talk about its current state or condition. So it's not chipped, but let's imagine that there was a chip here. So we would say está astillada. So astillada is chipped. This would be a condition that it's in. Doesn't relate to its core identity. It's just the current condition of it. Or está limpia or está sucio. This should be sucia because una taza is feminine. So being chipped or being clean or being dirty, again, says nothing about this cup's identity. It's only relating to the current condition or current state that it's in. Before leaving this video, there's one last thing that I would like to bring to your attention. Let's visualize a banana. And someone could ask you, what color is a banana? Now, the majority of people would reply, yellow. The color yellow belongs to a banana's identity. This is how we would immediately think of it. But of course, bananas can be green if they're not ripe. They can, of course, also be yellow as we imagine them. Or if they're too old and they're going rotten, they can be black. If we were to put these three options on one slide in Spanish, we would have el plátano. So this is the banana. Es amarillo. This is ser. So because normally we think of a banana or the color of a banana as being yellow by default, this belongs to its identity, this color of yellow. However, if we were saying el plátano is green, so we would switch into está, because being green doesn't belong to the general association we have of what color goes with a banana. This is the state that it's currently in, está verde. Equally, if it was old and rotting, we would say el plátano está negro, so it's black. Notice here the clear distinction in Spanish between using ser, because amarillo, the color yellow, is associated with the identity of a banana, its color, whereas being green or black is just the current state or condition that it's in. And so Spanish switched out of ser and went into estar. Another example could be if we think about the sky. And again, someone could ask you, what color is the sky? Again, most people, the immediate thing or answer that would come to their mind is blue, right? The sky is blue. But of course, the sky can sometimes be gray. So again, Spanish will use ser and estar here. So el cielo es azul. So blue belongs to the identity of the sky, how we normally think about it. Whereas if the sky was gray, let's say it was cloudy, you would not say el cielo es gris. You would say el cielo está gris. This is not the normal thing or the normal color that we would apply to the sky. So on one side we have the sky's identity, es azul. And on the other side we have the current state that it's in, está gris. In fact, we could even put this into one sentence. So you could say, normalmente el cielo es azul. So normally the sky is blue. Pero hoy el cielo está gris. But today the sky is gray. Let's do two more examples. We'll imagine a peach. So we could say the peach is sweet. Being sweet is part of a peach's identity. It's a sweet fruit. However, you could also say, or it could also be a fact, that at the moment the peach is sour. It's not fully ripe. So on one side we would have el durazno, so this is the peach, es dulce. You see, we're using ser because dulce, or being sweet, belongs to the personality or belongs to the identity of a peach. However, if we wanted to say that the peach was sour, that it wasn't ripe yet, el durazno está amargo. The peach is sour. On one side, we are expressing the identity of this peach, and on the other side, we are expressing its current state or condition. One final example, let's imagine, or let's think about our internet connection. And let's imagine that we pay a lot of money each month for this and that it's a super fast connection. So the fact that it's super fast belongs to the identity of this internet connection. This is how we visualize it. This is how we would describe it. So on one side, we could have mi internet es rápido. See, we have ser, es rápido. This is its identity. It's fast. But then you could continue and say, pero hoy, but today, está lento. It's slow. Being slow does not belong to the identity of our internet connection. We pay a lot of money for it, and it's normally very fast. But today happens to be slow. So this is the conditional state that it's in today. Está lento. Pero normalmente es rápido. In every example, you can see that Spanish will use this difference between ser and estar. On one side, ser is always being used to describe this thing's identity. Now, if it were to vary from this, then Spanish switches into estar to describe its current state or condition, which is different from its identity normally. Welcome to part 2 of our deeper look at the relationship between ser and estar. I'd like to give you some more examples to consider. Let's first visualize a coffee table. Now, what are some of the things we could say about the identity of a coffee table? Well, first of all, we might say that it's made of wood, and that the wood was mahogany, that it was from Indonesia, that's where it was made, that it's 3 foot tall, that the shape is rectangle, and that the color is brown. All of these things would belong to the identity of this coffee table. So for that reason, all of these things would be expressed using ser in Spanish. Now, if we switched over to its current condition or state, we could say that the leg is cracked, or the top of it is scratched. We might comment that it's dusty. So all of these things would use estar to be expressed in Spanish, because now we're not referring to its identity, but rather just the current state or condition that it's in. Next up, I'd like us to imagine a window, and we're going to talk or identify some of the things about the identity of this window. So first of all, it's glass, and let's imagine that it was bulletproof. So being bulletproof would belong to the identity of this window. Let's imagine that it's 1 inch thick, that it's from the US, that it's expensive, and that it's impressive, meaning what it can do is impressive. So again, all of these things would take ser in Spanish because they refer to its identity, how we would describe it and see it. Now, switching over to estar, we again talk about its condition or its state. So, saying that it's clean or that it's dirty, that it's open or closed, that it's working or that it's broken. These things are not about its identity. These things are all about the current state or condition it's in. Next up, I'd like to do some sentence examples where we use both ser and estar in the one sentence or one phrase. So first of all, let's look at this one. We have, this watch is Swiss. It's expensive, but it's scratched. Now let's look at how Spanish would handle this, because we have 3 instances where we have to make a choice between ser and estar in this phrase. First of all, we have is, and then another it is, and another it is. So Spanish, or the translation of this would be, este reloj, this watch, es suizo, it's Swiss. So using ser, because being from Switzerland, being a Swiss watch, belongs to its identity. Now, es caro, it's expensive. Again, being expensive or being cheap belongs to its identity. Pero está rayado, it's scratched. See how Spanish switched out of ser and into estar, because being scratched is just the current condition or state of the watch. Here's another example. We have, this frying pan is good, but the handle is burned. So we have a choice of ser or estar here and here. Now, Spanish would translate it as, esta sartén, this frying pan, es buena. So being good belongs to the identity of this frying pan. Pero el mango, the handle, está quemado, but the handle is burned. This is the conditional state that the handle is in, so Spanish switched into estar to express this. Here's another example for you. We have, this towel is white and it's wet. I'm sure your mind is immediately now leaping to the fact that being white belongs to the identity of the towel, but the fact that it's wet is just the current state or condition that it's in. So Spanish will say, esta toalla, this towel, es blanca. Y está mojada, and it's wet. Let's continue. This door is strong and secure, but it's unlocked. Now, being strong refers to the identity of this door. This is how we visualize it, how we see it. Also, the fact that it's secure belongs to its identity. But the fact that it's unlocked is just the current state that it's in. So Spanish will translate this as, esta puerta es fuerte. This door is strong y segura and secure, pero está abierta. Again, the fact that it's open says nothing about the identity of this door. It's a strong and secure door. That's its identity. The fact that it may be open or closed, locked or unlocked, is just its condition at the moment. Let's look at another. This book is interesting, but some pages are torn. Again, I'm sure that your mind is immediately deciding on its own that being interesting belongs to the identity of the book. That's how we see it. Now, the fact that some pages are torn is just the condition that it's in. So again, Spanish will translate this as, este libro es interesante. This book is interesting. Pero algunas páginas, but some pages, están rasgadas, are torn. So some pages, they are torn. Spanish again making a distinction using ser and estar between the identity of the book being interesting and the current condition that it's in with pages being torn. What about this one? This knife is stainless steel, but it's blunt. So, being stainless steel, what it's made of course belongs to the identity of this knife. The fact that it's blunt is just its current state or condition. Again, you can see we have two choices to make between ser and estar in this one phrase. So, Spanish will say, este cuchillo, this knife, es de acero inoxidable, is made from stainless steel. Pero está desafilado, but it is blunt. The reason we're doing so many examples in this way is because Spanish is doing something that we do not have to do in English. In English we have it is and it is, but in Spanish we have to make a distinction. A choice has to be made between ser and estar. Let's look at two more things before we leave this video. Here's the first one. We want to say, I'm calm. Now, would you use ser or estar? The answer is, it depends. Both can be correct. So it depends on what it is you want to express. If you said, soy tranquilo, or if you're a female, soy tranquila, so you're using ser, this would be understood to the ears of a native Spanish speaker that what you're saying about yourself is that you're a calm person in general. This is how you would describe yourself, how you see yourself. Being calm, being easygoing or relaxed, tranquil, belongs to your identity. However, if you said estoy tranquilo or estoy tranquila, now what you're saying is, well, I'm calm right now. Or at this point in time or at this point in my life, I'm feeling calm. But you're not saying that this is necessarily something that belongs to your identity. Maybe your identity is quite the opposite of that. Here's another example. I'm depressed. Again, you have a choice. You could use ser or estar. So if you said soy deprimido, or again, we could say soy deprimida, now what you're expressing is that you're a depressed person in general. That more often than not, you're walking around depressed. This is how you see yourself, and it's probably how other people see you too. Whereas switching into estar, now you're expressing that at the moment what you're going through is that you're feeling a little down or a little depressed. But this feeling of depression does not belong to your identity. Let's look at one more example. We have the house is dirty. Now, you can use either ser or estar here and be grammatically correct in Spanish, but the meaning is different. The meaning will change. So on one side, you could say, la casa es sucia. This means, or what you are saying is that being dirty belongs to the identity of this house. That it's always dirty. That's how you visualize this house, how you would describe it. This, in your opinion, belongs to this house's identity, that it's a dirty house. Whereas you could also say la casa está sucia. Now this does not belong to the identity of the house, it's just the current state or condition that it's in. So what does this mean for us? Why am I giving you these kinds of examples? Well, the reason is that the decision whether to use ser or estar is not just about following some grammatical rule. It's also about knowing what it is that you want to express and making the right choice between ser and estar in order to express that. Because there are many times when both ser and estar will be grammatically correct in the same sentence. It's only the meaning that's changing. Both choices are right. So when you're talking about people or things, you must always be aware of whether you are expressing things or your opinions about that person's identity, that animal's identity, that thing's identity, or whether you are expressing things about its current state or condition or the emotions they may be going through. Now here's the second thing that I would like you to take notice of before we leave. It's connected to the point previously. Because often the choice between using ser or estar isn't based on any type of external fact. For example, let's imagine a painting, and you personally, in your own opinion, think that this painting is beautiful. So you will say, es hermoso. It's beautiful. Being beautiful is how you see the identity of this painting. Now, someone else standing right next to you might disagree and say, no, es feo. Because to them, the identity of this painting is that it's ugly. So you can see that both uses of ser were correct in Spanish. So you can have this painting, este cuadro es hermoso. Or alternatively, este cuadro es feo. Two completely opposite opinions, but they're both presenting themselves as relating to the identity of this painting. The thing is that these are just your opinions. Your opinion on the identity of an object or an animal or a person is only from your own viewpoint, or is often from your own viewpoint. So this is why when you're using or making a choice between ser or estar, it often doesn't have to be based on any type of actual truth or fact. What you are really doing in Spanish is expressing your own perception or your own opinion of this thing's identity or its state or condition or person's emotion. This is why at a certain point in Spanish, you have to let go a little of holding on tightly to grammatical rules, because the topic of ser and estar in Spanish is something that adds a lot of extra expression into the language. You can play with the choices as native Spanish speakers do in order to express what it is that you are really thinking or visualizing. Welcome to part 3. So far we've been talking a lot about the most important considerations we make with ser and estar. But there are also some minor uses that I would like us to be aware of. We already know that ser equals identity, but ser will also be used in Spanish when talking about time or dates. So saying that it's 2 o'clock, or that it's Thursday, or that it's the 12th of April, all of these ones, it is, will take ser in Spanish. So time and dates will take ser. We also use ser a lot for simply a general usage of it is. What do I mean by that? Well, saying things like, it is possible, it's impossible, it's good, it's fantastic, it's a shame, it's important, it's a disaster. All of these general uses of it is will take ser. So es posible, es imposible, es bueno, es fantástico, es una lástima, es importante, es un desastre. One more thing to be aware of, but this time on the estar side, is that we know we use estar for emotions and feelings, location, and when we're talking about inanimate objects, we use it to describe their current condition or state that they're in. But we will also use estar to express things about status. So, a very important question to help you with this can be, what's your status? Meaning, are you married? Are you divorced? Are you dead? Are you alive? Are you single? Are you engaged? Are you separated? Are you retired? All of these relate to status. Remember, what's your status? And these things will take estar in Spanish. So let's try to sum all of this up on one slide. If we had to put this entire module, or pretty much everything we've talked about so far in the course about ser and estar, it could be summarized into this slide. So for ser, we are using it for identity, for time and dates, and as a general usage. It is possible, it's impossible, and so forth. Whereas estar, we're talking about feelings or emotions. We're talking about the condition or state that something is in. We use it for location, where someone is or where something is. And to that, I would also now like to add this idea of status. What's your status? Married, divorced, single, dead or alive, so forth. So here on one slide, we have a summary of how we are going to make a distinction, or the things that we need to consider when making a choice between using ser or estar in Spanish. As one very final thought, we also know that sometimes both options are correct. It all depends on what it is you want to express or what you are visualizing. In part 4, I'm going to ask you to make your own decision between whether you use ser or estar. So going back to our chart, we're focusing on the first 2 lines here. We have the conjugation in the present tense for ser, and below that, we have the conjugation for estar. To isolate it, we'll begin by just using or choosing between soy and estoy. Both of them obviously mean I am. For example, how would you say, I'm Natalia? Soy Natalia. We obviously went with the ser side because your name belongs to your identity. What's the word for tall? Alto or alta? How would you say, I'm tall? Soy alto. Or if you're female, you'll say soy alta. The word for married in Spanish is casado or casada. How would you say, I'm married? Estoy casado. Or again, if you're female, estoy casada. Now, we went with estar because this belongs to our status. Being single or married, divorced, even being dead or alive belongs to your status. So that's why we went with estar. What's the word for person? Persona. How would you say, I'm a happy person? Soy una persona feliz. Of course, the meaning here is that in general, this is how we would describe ourselves as a happy person. So, soy, belonging to our identity. Now, what about I'm happy today? Estoy feliz hoy. Here we are not describing our identity, just that we're feeling happy today. To express from Mexico would be de México. How would you say, I'm from Mexico? Soy de México. The word for worried is preocupado or preocupada. It reminds you of the word preoccupied in English. How would you say, I'm worried? Estoy preocupado. Or again, estoy preocupada. To go one step further and to say that you're worried about something, the phrase would be preocupado or preocupada por. So you'll just add por to the end of it. Now, how would you say my son? Mi hijo. Let's put it together. I'm worried about my son. Estoy preocupado or preocupada por mi hijo. So this is the current state that I'm in, or the current feeling or emotion that I'm going through. Now let's talk about where you are or where you might be. What's the word for car? Coche. And this is a masculine word, so el coche. How would you say, I'm in my car? Estoy en mi coche. Of course, estar was used here because this refers to location, where you are. The word for honest is honesto or honesta. How would you say, I'm honest? Soy honesto or soy honesta. Let's try to put some of those examples all on one slide now. So we'll imagine that we're Natalia, and we want to express all of this. I'm Natalia, I'm tall, I'm from Mexico, I'm married, I'm a happy person, I'm honest, I'm worried about my son. So choose between soy or estoy for each one of these examples. It would be soy Natalia, soy alta, soy de México, estoy casada, soy una persona feliz, soy honesta, estoy preocupada por mi hijo. I'd like to change angles now and to do the same type of exercise, but choosing between es or está. So this can mean he is, she is, or it is in both cases. What's the word for door? Puerta. This is a feminine word, la puerta. Now, to express that it's closed or that it's locked, the word is cerrado or cerrada. How would you say the door is locked? La puerta está cerrada. We're using estar because this is the current state that the door is in. Being open or closed, locked or unlocked, says nothing about the door's identity. It's just the current state that it's in. So la puerta está cerrada. The color white in Spanish is blanco or blanca. How would you say the door is white? La puerta es blanca. Now the color of the door relates to its identity. So this is why we went on the ser side with la puerta es blanca. Now, could it be está blanca? The answer is yes. Let's imagine that our door, or our front door, is normally green. And it's always been green ever since we moved into the house. But we arrive home one day and someone has inexplicably painted it white. To express that this was not the norm, or being white is not our door's identity. The identity of our door is green, but now it's white. So this is an example of where we'd switch over and say, la puerta está blanca. The word for solid in Spanish is sólido or sólida. Make sure that you stress this part of the word, sólido, sólida. And the word for secure is seguro or segura. How would you say the door is solid and secure? La puerta es sólida y segura. Being solid and being secure belongs to our door's identity. This is how we view it, its characteristics. To express open or unlocked, again, it's the same word in Spanish. It would be abierto or abierta. How would you say the door is unlocked? La puerta está abierta. We went with abierta because we are referring to la puerta. And being open or closed, locked or unlocked, things like that, is the state that the door is currently in. So we have on the estar side, está abierta. Now let's put a few of them together on one slide. How would you say the door is white, it's solid and secure, but it's unlocked? La puerta es blanca, es sólida y segura, pero está abierta. Now let's switch over to a window. This in Spanish is ventana, la ventana. To express huge or enormous, in Spanish is enorme. How would you say the window is huge? La ventana es enorme. The size of the window and the fact that it's huge belongs to its identity. Now the word for broken is roto or rota. How would you say the window is broken? La ventana está rota. So this is the current state or condition that the window is in. The word for dirty is sucio or sucia. How would you say the window is dirty? La ventana está sucia. Again, this is the condition, the current condition that it's in. Once again, how would you say the window is huge? La ventana es enorme, but it's very dirty. Pero está muy sucia. Let's switch angles again to you are. So on our chart, the two sounds that we have to choose from will be eres or estás. How would you say you are here? Estás aquí. How would you ask? Are you here? ¿Estás aquí? The word for nervous is nervioso or nerviosa. And let's imagine that we're talking about Juan. How would you say to him, you are nervous? ¿Estás nervioso? Notice that in English we had at this particular moment. So estás nervioso. This is the emotion or the feeling he's going through. Now, how would you ask? Are you nervous? ¿Estás nervioso? How would you say you are Juan? ¿Eres Juan? How would you ask? Are you Juan? ¿Eres Juan? This, of course, is relating to his identity, his name. In this next slide, we have you are from Peru. In Spanish, Peru is the same, but you just put an accent on the end, Peru. So how would you say this? Eres de Peru. Now ask, are you from Peru? ¿Eres de Peru? How would you ask, are you happy today? ¿Estás feliz hoy? Now, how would you ask, are you a happy person? ¿Eres una persona feliz? Notice that in the first question, we have obviously this big clue of today. So this is why we fell onto the estar side with ¿Estás feliz hoy? But on the second question, now we are referring to identity and asking if you're a happy person in general, if this describes you. So we went onto the ser side. ¿Eres una persona feliz? We'll pretend that we're continuing to talk or refer to Juan, but I'm going to change the angle now, so we have to choose between es or está. How would you say he is Juan? Es Juan. He's tall. Es alto. The word for handsome is guapo. If you're referring to a female, you can also say guapa, which would mean kind of good looking. How would you say he's handsome? Es guapo. If we switched here and said está guapo, what would we be expressing with that? So with está guapo, we're saying that he looks good right now. Maybe he's wearing a suit and he doesn't often do that. So está guapo. In this current state, he's looking handsome. Whereas es guapo, we're saying that this belongs to his identity, that he's a handsome man. If we want to say something like he's a professor, so the word for professor is profesor, or if it's a female, profesora. So how would you say he's a professor? Es profesor. Hopefully you remembered to not put in un. So es un profesor. In Spanish, they don't do this. They leave out the a or the an. They simply go from the verb straight into what the person is. So es profesor. Let's try putting a few of them now on one slide. So we're talking about Juan. We're saying he's Juan, he's tall, he's handsome, he's a professor. Es Juan, es alto y guapo. Es profesor. We stayed with ser the whole way because all of this belongs to his identity. How we see him, how we would describe him, how we would visualize him in our minds. How would you say he's happy, meaning he's happy right now? Está feliz. The word for busy is ocupado or ocupada. How would you say he's busy? Está ocupado. Now, being busy is not relating to his identity. It's just what's going on right now. So, está ocupado. One last one. How would you say he's at the door? Está en la puerta. Remember that when you have this at in English, at the door, at the supermarket, at the party, at home, in Spanish they will transform this to literally in the door, in the party, in the supermarket. So this is why we went with está en la puerta. Let's change angles to we are. The two sounds we have to choose from are somos or estamos. How would you say we are here? Estamos aquí. Do you remember the word for married? Casado or casada. Of course, this can also go into plural, so you could have casados or casadas. How would you say we are married? Estamos casados. Just as before, being married belongs to your status. Single, married, divorced, whatever. So estamos casados. The word for together is juntos. How would you say we are happy together? Somos felices juntos. This belongs to our identity, how we would describe our relationship, or how we are together in general. So, somos felices juntos. How would you say we are Juan and Elisa? Somos Juan y Elisa. We are from Peru. Somos de Perú. We are married. Estamos casados. We are happy together. Somos felices juntos. What's the word for friend? Amigo or amiga. How would you say we are friends? Somos amigos. Being friends is a little bit more abstract, but it does still belong to our identity, how we see ourselves, how we would describe ourselves. Somos amigos. If we said estamos amigos, that would sound quite strange because it's implying something more temporary, like we're friends at the moment. Now let's finish with they are. Again, we have two sound choices. It can either be son or están. Do you remember the word for the window? La ventana. How would you say the windows? Las ventanas. What about the word for dirty? Sucio or sucia? Now we're going to use this in plural, so it could transform into sucios or sucias. How would you say the windows are dirty? Las ventanas están sucias. So it's in plural for las ventanas, and this is the current state or condition that they're in. Están sucias. What about the word for open? Abierto or abierta. Again, in plural, this would switch to abiertos, abiertas. How would you say the windows are open? Las ventanas están abiertas. What about closed or locked? Cerrado or cerrada. How would you say the windows are locked? Las ventanas están cerradas. Do you remember the word for huge or enormous? Enorme. Now say the windows are huge. Las ventanas son enormes. The word for expensive is caro or cara. How would you say the windows are expensive? Las ventanas son caras. Being cheap, being expensive, belongs to the identity of these windows. So, las ventanas son caras. Maybe they're imported from a different country, or they have some feature in them that's higher quality than normal. Again, this is all belonging to their identity. Let's see if you recall this or these. For example, how would you say these windows are expensive? Estas ventanas son caras. Switching over now to talking about people, how would you say over there? Por allí. Now, how would you say they are over there? Están por allí. Obviously, we went with están because it's about location, where they are. The word for retired is retirado or retirada. Of course, this can also be in plural, so retirados, retiradas. How would you say they are retired? Están retirados. So this is their status. Being employed, being retired, it's all relating to your status. What about they are married? Están casados. Again, this is status. How would you say they are happy together? Son felices juntos. They are Juan and Lorena. Son Juan y Lorena. Do you remember the word for worried? Preocupado or preocupada. Again, this can of course go into plural as well. How would you express they are worried? Están preocupados. What about the expression I think that? Creo que. I think that they're worried. Creo que están preocupados. We obviously continued here with estar because this is emotion, feeling what they're going through. I'd like to finish up with just one sound, which is es, meaning it is. Now, this is it is in a general sense. For example, how would you say it's possible? Es posible. I think it's possible. Creo que es posible. The word for a shame or the phrase would be una lástima. How would you say, I think it's a shame? Creo que es una lástima. The word for wonderful is maravilloso or maravillosa. Notice the strong Y sound here. Yoso, yosa. How would you say, I think it's wonderful? Creo que es maravilloso. These are examples of what I mean by using es in a general sense for it is. So it's possible, it's impossible, it's a shame, it's wonderful, it's fantastic. All of these would be es fantástico, es posible, es imposible, things like that. So to summarize, in this video, we've been through every angle in the conjugations of ser and estar, making decisions between which sound we're going to go for, depending on what it is we want to express. These are obviously very important sounds to add to your Spanish. And over time, you're going to get very, very familiar with them because you'll use them all the time. In a nutshell, we're using ser for identity. This is the key thing with ser, its biggest use. But we also use it when it comes to time and dates and in just a general usage as we just discussed. Whereas estar is for feelings and emotions, or if it's an inanimate object, what condition or state that it's in. We also use estar for location, where you are, where people are, or where things are. And of course, status, being single or married, divorced, being separated, being dead, being alive. These are all belonging to status and will take a star.